Just to review a little bit, this nitric oxide piece. Now, I want you to think of it like this. You know, when you're thinking about the blood pressure, you've got the output. And once the heart is outputting blood, your blood vessels are either clamped down to receive them or clamped open to receive them, right? So, of course, if they're clamped down, you're going to have more pressure. It's just like your water hose. The water hose, water's just going out. You put your thumb on it. Same thing. Vasodilation versus vasoconstriction. Constriction is when the blood vessels are closed. So clearly, it makes sense that if your heart is outputting high, so you got the volume, and you're constricted, you're going to have higher levels of blood pressure. And not only are you going to have higher levels of blood pressure, you're going to have less blood flow to all of the places that we need really good blood flow. So when we're thinking about how to reduce blood pressure or improve blood flow to an area, we're thinking about how can we get the blood vessels a little wider? How can we relax those blood vessels so that they're get a little bit more elasticity to them? And then how are those blood vessels actually functioning? So keeping that in mind, blood pressure is impacted by vitamin D levels, magnesium levels, nitric oxide levels, antioxidant levels. All of these are going to have positive impact on your blood pressure. Whereas the calcium, insulin resistance in diabetics or pre-diabetics, high blood sugar, aging, free reactive oxygen species, stress, toxins, all of these things are going to have negative impact on blood pressure and blood flow. So high blood pressure equals hypertension. High blood pressure and hypertension equals decreased blood flow to the erectile area, right? So what's happening with those blood vessels are a few things. One, we have endothelial cell dysfunction. So that's the lining of the blood vessels. We have the reactive oxygen species and oxidative stress. And what that's doing is decreasing the availability of nitric oxide. We can't make as much nitric oxide, right? And then we have this impaired widening of the blood vessels. So as time takes a hold and blood pressure is there, high blood pressure is there, now all of a sudden our blood vessels are spending more time clamped down than wide open. More time clamped down than wide open. So then it becomes strategies as to opening them up a little bit more. Maybe you don't want to open them up too much because then when the blood pressure goes too low, your body isn't what we call perfusing enough, That's why sometimes you get on a blood pressure medication and you might feel lightheaded. You're like, oh, this is making me really tired. Well, oftentimes it may be lowering your blood pressure too much or slowing your heart rate too much to the point that you're not comfortable with it anymore. So blood vessels stiffen over time, and we call that vascular calcification. And it's a result of aging. It's a result of decreased nitric oxide levels in those blood vessels. The cells lining the blood vessels can get damaged. Phosphate and calcium build up. This is why I'd always say, please don't supplement calcium. You get enough of it as is. Very seldom are you going to need to take a vitamin or a multivitamin that has calcium in it. Chronic nervous system activation, because remember, when we're talking even about erections, if your nervous system is activated, if noradrenaline, the stress hormone, is high, that is the lock that keeps the erections flaccid. So we have to remove the norepinephrine and override it in order to get an erection. It's the same with blood vessels, right? When norepinephrine is on deck, it has our blood pressure up because we're in fight or flight, right? Like you're driving down the street, the police have been behind you for 2 blocks, you start to sweat, your blood pressure goes up, you can feel your heart rate go up. That's norepinephrine, that's adrenaline coursing through your body. That will keep you stiff. So imagine if you have chronic stress day in, day out, something stressful happening all the time, that will interfere with your erections because neurologically, you cannot get erect if those norepinephrine and noradrenaline levels are too high, because remember, we need it high to stay flaccid. Does that make sense? Insulin resistance, diabetes, smoking, all of that calcifies or stiffens the arteries. So vascular stiffness predicts heart attacks. right? There are some doctors that will order a coronary calcium score. And what are they doing? They're looking at how stiff those arteries are, because if they're real stiff, that predicts heart disease. So the sympathetic nervous system stays active all the time. That's chronic stimulation, that's chronic stress. But the system also can be regulated by nitric oxide. So if your nitric oxide levels are a little higher, then we can help modulate that system better, right? Then another thing is you're retaining fluid volume when your nitric oxide levels are lower. So you get blood pressure down, you have less stiff blood vessels, they're wider, you've got circulating fluid has kind of gone down because the fluid is going to the places that it needs to. So all of that. Now, I want to be very mindful that when you're fixing endothelial cell dysfunction, when you're fixing the lining of blood vessels, you have to keep in mind that Black people tend to have impaired nitric oxide dependent vasodilation. I'm going to circle that again. So when everybody's saying Black and brown people have more hypertension than anybody else, when you're looking at your friends and family who are exercising all the time, they're eating right, and they still can't get their blood pressure down, this is a known fact that nobody talks about, and it's hidden in the scientific journal somewhere, that Black people actually have impaired nitric oxide dependent vasodilation. And what that means is something is happening in that process of creating the nitric oxide. And we believe it's in the nitric oxide synthase, the NOS, that's required to produce nitric oxide. So when the rest of the population's nitric oxide levels are declining, it seems as though in the African American community that nitric oxide level is plummeting even faster. And it happens more and more rapidly the older that you get, right? And so women are protected for a while because estrogen levels help keep nitric oxide levels elevated. But as women start to hit menopause, you start to see a plummet. That's why we see in women as they start to hit 60 and 70, they actually start to develop more heart attacks, because that estrogen's protecting them for a while, and we feel like that protection is related to the nitric oxide levels, right? So I think it's important to back up what I'm saying. Back it up, right? Back it up. This is a whole paragraph that talks about the nitric oxide dependent vasodilation in Black patients. And I feel like we've known it way too long. This was written in 2006. Of course, I didn't get the memo till later. And I feel like a lot of other doctors are getting it later too, because some of you are coming back and the doctor's just telling you, I don't want your nitric oxide levels higher. I want you to pull this article and show it to them, leave it on their desk, email it to them so that they can get in the know too, because there was a point where I didn't know either. Right? So another way to improve nitric oxide synthesis is using nitrate donors. So the supplement that I recommend is a nitrate donor. The Smoothie Recipes, they're packed with nitrate donors, right? That's what we did. Sat down and came up with recipes that were jam-packed with nitrate donors, right? Because nitrate donors are basically nitrate-rich food or supplements that you're taking in that's donating the nitrate to help encourage your body to make more nitric oxide. And it's safer than L-arginine because it doesn't go and become ADMA if it's not used, right? And this is another one I want you to pull for your doctors. This is from 2008. This stuff has been around from 2008, and we're still putting people on the same damn blood pressure medicines we've been using since I was in med school. Right. So this is racial differences in nitric oxide dependent vasorelaxation. So when we're talking about the vasorelaxation, I'm talking about blood flow throughout your body, particularly, in this instance, we can say it, particularly to the erection. So you got to get your nitric oxide levels up. This is worse in the African American community, but it applies to everybody. And this just goes on and on and on. I could read it. So nitric oxide synthase polymorphisms in Black Americans. How do we decrease hypertension naturally? Vitamin D levels, magnesium levels. Listen, vitamin D needs to be, if you're going to take vitamin D, you need to be taking magnesium too. You don't want to add too much vitamin D without having magnesium on board, because that vitamin D can cause problems. It can cause arterial stiffness if there's no magnesium for it to do what it needs to do. You want to improve nitric oxide levels. You want to add as many antioxidants into your diet as possible. Smoothie recipes will get you there too. You know, some people just aren't about vegetables. My good friend Roland Martin tells me all the time, Doc, I hate vegetables. He don't want to eat them. He don't want to drink them. And so what does he do? He takes the supplement that I recommend, because he recognizes, hey, I got to get my nitric oxide levels up. They're important enough. And I don't like vegetables, right? And then avoid calcium. I'm sorry. I don't want it. Look at your multivitamin, the cheap multivitamins that they sell us in the pharmacy. Make sure it doesn't have calcium in it. You got to work on your insulin resistance, making sure that you're getting your blood sugars down. Aging is going to interfere with this. I mean, aging is one of the most beautiful things in life, right? If we didn't age, we'd be dead. So we'll take that. Reactive oxygen species, stress, and toxins, they all are going to interfere with things. So I want you to keep in mind, if you increase your nitrates naturally through diet, through the smoothie recipes, or maybe you're taking a supplement that's nitrate rich, it converts over to nitrites. And what we're doing is we're decreasing intracellular calcium. We need the calcium to go out of the cells so that the blood vessels can expand, and so we can decrease blood pressure and improve blood flow. Bow, 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 bow. Right. Awesome.